from every single class period. So I tell them, okay, take them outside and go, okay, tell me about the Nuestro. I don't know it. I'm like, that's your problem. We're doing it every single day. So I'm mean. Es el Padre nuestro, en nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo. Amén. Padre nuestro que estás en el cielo, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga a nosotros tu reino. Hágase tu voluntad, así en la tierra como en el cielo. Danos hoy nuestro pan de cada día. Perdona nuestras ofensas, como también nosotros perdonamos a los que nos ofenden. Y no nos dejes caer en la tentación, mas líbranos del mal. Amén. En nombre del Padre, Hijo y Espíritu Santo. Amén. All right. Thank you very much. And as you know, this is our last semester. We are coming back on January 25th. It's a long time. It's a nice break. No more nightmares about us on Tuesday. So remember January 5th. We'll see each other then. I will put something on Facebook, and I may just send a message out, text message to everybody saying, remember this. Okay, so we have a special guest, Dr. Cortez. And he will speak to us about something that he's taking a sabbatical right now. And he is studying more about Our Lady of Guadalupe, if I am correct. I am correct. So he's going to be talking to us about Our Lady of Guadalupe, which is her festival. Her festival is coming up in about 5 days. Come on up. I will play jazz with you and you know it.
Well, first of all, let me say it's an honor to be back. It's a joy to be back. It's wonderful to see so many friendly faces. My phone is off, don't worry. I may need it to time myself, otherwise I'll get carried away. But it's wonderful to be back. It's wonderful to see you. It's wonderful to be here to talk about this subject. So let's talk a little bit about La Virgen de Guadalupe. Okay, La Virgen de Guadalupe. You have the little pamphlet, don't you? Actually, that's one of the most informative pamphlets I think I've ever seen. It's amazing how much information you have there. Now, anytime a person gives a talk about the Virgin of Guadalupe, you have to ask yourself, now, is this going to be a devotional talk? Is it going to be historical? What's it going to be? Well, I'm going to try to mix it all together. I'm going to try to put some things together here and just talk about this in general. First of all, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Let's look at that name. You know me. I love names. Those of you who have been my students, you already know all the answers. Some of you will say, oh, here we go again. It's all right. Guadalupe. Who remembers the meaning of this name? The meaning of this name, the etymons, which means the root words that give us Guadalupe. Do you remember? Does this help you remember a little bit? Guada means river, right? As in the rivers of Spain, Guadiana, Guadarrama, and so on. Guadalquivir, Guada. But it's an Arabic word, and it means river. And then the second part, Lupe, is a very common name. Actually, it's Latin lupus, which means wolf. And as you know, probably you've known people whose last name was Wolf. It's not so unusual. And also, you probably know that the name Lope in Spanish, not an unusual name, especially if we think of the Golden Age. We think of the age of Lope de Vega. That's lupus. That's the Spanish form of lupus, Lope. So Guadalupe, is Guadalupe a man's name or a woman's name? I need to ask, I'm going to ask a volunteer. Go ahead. You know, and I think most people think that. You know, you think, well, surely this is a woman's name, and it is in most places, but not necessarily in Mexico. In Mexico, it can also be a man's name. It can be a man's name. The name Lupe, for example, not so unusual as a name for a man. Maybe not as common anymore. I mean, now, after all, everything's anglicized. You know, the kids are named Summer, Jennifer, I don't know what else, Spring. I'll stop before I hurt someone's feelings. No, I don't want to offend my audience, but I want to say this. Traditionally, of course, as we know in the Spanish-speaking world, you usually are named, or you were, certainly up until the 19th century, the late 19th century, you were named on your birthday after the saint of the day. So if you said to a person, well, when is your birthday? In the old days, you would say, ¿Qué día es su santo? ¿Qué día es su santo? When is your saint's day? Which is the same as your birthday, right? But there are special exceptions. There were even then, 19th century, 18th century, and so on. You could be named a very special name. A name like, for example, Lupe. Even if you were a man. Who knows who this was in Mexican history? Guadalupe Victoria. Who was Guadalupe Victoria? One of the first presidents of Mexico. Actually, that wasn't his name. He changed his name to Guadalupe Victoria when he became president of Mexico. He said, I want to be named something that's very Mexican. Guadalupe Victoria. That is the name he gave himself. Very important. You can't. I can't overestimate. I can't tell you. How important it is for people to be named Guadalupe, Lupe, Lupita, etc. Very, very, very important. In fact, there are even women named Maria de Guadalupe. Of course, there are. Why is this name so important in Mexico? Especially when you consider that it's actually a Spanish name. Guadalupe is a Spanish name, and there's actually a Virgin of Guadalupe in Spain. Does anyone know where this is? Which Virgin of Guadalupe this is? The Virgin of Extremadura. And many of the conquerors, many of the people who participated in the conquest of the New World actually were from Extremadura, from that part of Spain. That is why some people were very critical of La Virgen de Guadalupe. You probably say, is that possible? It is so possible. Many of the people are so critical of the Virgin of Guadalupe say, no, this was actually a Spanish tradition. It was a Spanish tradition, but it wasn't exclusively a Spanish tradition. In fact, once devotion to the Virgin of Guadalupe became popular in Mexico, within a very short time it eclipsed the devotion to La Virgen de Guadalupe, which was already there. Why not take a name that already existed? Why not? It's not a problem. Especially, there was already devotion to another Virgin of Guadalupe. But this Guadalupe was different. For many reasons, many reasons. I love that you put that up there. Just for the record, and I'm not trying to lose you, you'll notice when you look at these rays, how many of them are faded. One of the things some of the critics of the Virgin of Guadalupe say, what is all this about this tilma stuff, about how it's lasted all this time and it's not fading? You can see clear deterioration. All you have to do is look at the rays. Guess what?
The rays were painted.
Those were added much later. They were painted on much later. This was like, someone thought it would be more beautiful. Let's add some rays to this. Let's fill this out a little bit. So they actually put those rays on. They were added much later. I think actually, if anything, this really hurts that argument that there's deterioration, because there is, but actually it's the stuff that's added that is deteriorating. There was also a long campaign to put a crown, a silver crown on top of the Virgen of Guadalupe. This was one of the major initiatives of the 19th century. But let's go back further. You know, I love to talk about the early Virgin of Guadalupe. That's actually one of my favorite subjects. Do you remember the story? If you don't, it's right there on that wonderful pamphlet, the wonderful information you have right there. There is a witness in the beginning. And who was this person? Who was the person who first saw?
Juan Diego.
And the name we give to this person is Juan Diego. But I'll give you $1 if you can tell me what his original name was. His name wasn't Juan Diego in the beginning. His name was Cuauhtlahuatzin. His name was Cuauhtlahuatzin, and his name means Cuautli, which is where Juan Diego was born. Huatzin, Cuautitlan, the town he was from, means the place of the eagles. The place of the eagles. Cuauhtlahuatzin means the eagle who speaks. How appropriate. How appropriate for a person who spoke very little and wrote nothing. We're often told, oh, this Juan Diego was this humble little Indian who was an Aztec. That's probably not true. Juan Diego was certainly not an Aztec, or the real name for Aztec, Mexica. It was not a Mexica. It was probably a Chichimeca, from all we know, from what we know about the community of Cuautitlan and so on. It was actually probably a Chichimeca. Why do people say, well, he was an Aztec? That's the only word they know. That's the generic word. But really, the generic, there is a generic word you should know, and I'm going to teach it to you right now. The generic word you should learn is the word Nahuatl. That's the language that was the lingua franca. It was the imperial language. Nahuatl is part of a family of languages that goes we even have examples of languages in the family in the western part of the United States, all the way up to Utah. Very important language, but it was the imperial language of the Mexicas, the Aztecs. Very, very important. And that world, that empire, which was still in existence up till 1520, was huge. How far south did it go? Does anyone know? How far south did the world of the Mexicas go, their empire? We know by the name of a place. The name of that place is Nicaragua. Nicaragua means aquí termina Anáhuac. Here Anáhuac ends. That's how far the Aztec Empire went, all the way to Nicaragua. It was that empire is the center of it. It's a city which was called the ombligo del mundo. The ombligo del mundo, el centro del mundo. That's Mexico. Mexico means that. Mex is middle. Middle. Mexico was the beginning. It was the center. It was where the world, the center of the world. And in the center of the world, the Christian missionaries had recently arrived. When we start thinking about the time of Saint Juan Diego, when did those missionaries arrive in what is now Mexico? Does anyone know? A short time before. Short time before. It was actually in the 1520s. In the 1520s, we're told of the story of 12 Franciscans who were sometimes called the 12 Apostles. The 12 Franciscans who first arrived, and one of the places where those Franciscans had a chapel was a place called, does anyone know the place I'm thinking of? The Plaza de las Tres Culturas. What's the name of that place? Is there another name for that place? Does anyone know? Who can tell me? I'm listening. The Plaza de las Tres Culturas. It's called, there was a famous massacre of students there. Tlatelolco. Tlatelolco. There at Tlatelolco, the Franciscans had they had a church. They were already baptizing converts. They were also learning as fast as they could the language of the native peoples. There, that is actually that. Man, I don't know what I'd do. If I had you at OU, I'd be famous, man. And look at this. This is why it's called the Plaza de Tres Culturas. One of my friends from Venezuela the other day was trying to tell me there's no Tres Culturas there because there's no Cultura Africana. I said, man, you got a Venezuelan outlook. This is not Venezuela. This is, of course, the marketplace of the Mexicas, right? The Christian tradition, which we see in the old Franciscan church there. One of the oldest churches in Mexico is right there. And behind that, modern Mexico, so you have, that's the raza cósmica. So you have raza indígena, raza cristiana, raza cósmica, modern Mexico. Those are the tres culturas. Now, why am I talking about this place? Because probably, well, Tlatuatzin, the eagle who speaks, was probably baptized right there at this place. Who knows what the original church looked like? I'm going to use a word, and I'll define it in a second. Does anyone know the meaning of the word ermita? Pardon? Yeah, hermitage. It means a little church. Ermita. The ermita. There was probably an ermita there before this big. Look at this beautiful church now, which survives. No. There's a baptismal font when you walk into that church, and it is said that Juan Diego was baptized there. We don't know for sure if he was baptized there, but it is thought that he was baptized there. Much of what we know about Juan Diego is based on later accounts, people who remembered, families who remembered. In 1666, it was a very famous meeting in Mexico where we need to investigate it, but a group of people came together and said, we need to talk about this Virgen de Guadalupe and this Juan Diego. We need to talk about the apparition. We need to know if this really happened. Of course, they all believed that it really happened. They just assumed that it already happened. But is there any living proof? So they had a whole group of investigators who went out. We have this record. We have actually a written record of this. They went out and they started talking to people who at that time were, in some instances, over 100 years old. Now, you think that there are native people in Mexico who could live beyond 100? There still are. There still are people who live beyond 100. And they would ask people who were over 100 years old, when did you first hear about the Virgen de Guadalupe? And their answer was almost always the same. Desde siempre. From always. Desde siempre. We always knew about this. Who told you? They would be asked. I have a record. I read the whole record. Who told you this? Mi tío, mi tía, mi abuela, mi mamá. How old were you? I don't remember. Maybe 7, maybe 6. For those people who, and there are people who say, how could there be any historical validity to this whole story if these people are being asked in 1666? Is that so long ago that there would not have been people who knew of events that took place in 1531 or 1550, 1555? Let's go a little further. 1557. Guess what happened in 1557? And we do have a record of this. The ermita is too small. the chapel at Tepeyac, the hill of the nose, Tepeyac. It's too small. We need to build a bigger one. 1557. Well, why would you build a bigger place? Why would you build a bigger place if you have this ermita and you have, how many people did they say are going there? Already in the 1570s, one of the opponents of the apparition. But I better not think of the Sahun. He was an opponent of it. He said, I'm sick and tired of these people who are going to Tepeyac and they're worshiping there the Virgin that they're calling Guadalupe. It drives me crazy. I'm against this. They're going there to worship Tonantzin. Who was Tonantzin? Who was Tonantzin? Tonantzin, sometimes called by people Latonas, the Mother Goddess. There was a shrine to the Mother Goddess there. Another reason why our friends, the anthropologists, say, oh, well, we know that that's all just part of an old tradition. Let me just tell you something, just so you know it. I know you already know this, but I love to, go over these wonderful histories. Like, for example, the Mezquita de Córdoba. When you hear someone say, oh, it's so disgusting. When I entered the Mezquita de Córdoba and I realized that that beautiful mosque had been made into a cathedral in the 16th century. The chapel of Charles V is in the Mezquita de Córdoba. What if I told you, actually, if you look at the Mezquita de Córdoba, the mosque at Córdoba in Spain, very closely inside, you can still see the Visigothic church. You can see the outline. And if you look even more closely, especially at those alabaster columns everywhere, that was the Roman temple. Those are from the Roman temple. So you take the materials from the Roman temple and you build a Visigothic church. And then after that, you build the Mezquita de Córdoba. And after that, you build the modern cathedral, Mezquita de Córdoba. You think it's different in the New World? You think it's different? You think you don't use the materials that are already there? You think you don't take the holy sites and turn them into Christian sites? Of course you do. Of course you do. Have you seen the Great Pyramid of Cholula? Which, by the way, is also now up with Cholulón. Lugar de huida. What does lugar de huida mean? Place of escape. Place of escape. Who escaped? Who? It's Nezahualcóyotl. That's the legend. Nezahualcóyotl escaped from there. And at the top of the... That's not it, actually. That's not... Well, that might be a depiction, but the pyramid there is what you see now. And at the very top, and that's the bottom. But notice at the very top, what do you see? You see a church. It's called La Virgen de los Remedios. Who ordered that church to be built? Hernán Cortés. He said, yes, this is a wonderful place. It's a wonderful, wonderful pyramid. Let's go ahead and put a church up. So let's make this a legitimate place of worship. Let's make it. That's everywhere. That's part of world history. That's how it works. So let's go back to Juan Diego. Juan Diego was watching from Cuautitlán, the place of the eagles. He had been baptized. And he was on his way. Where was he on his way to? Who knows? I gave you a hint earlier. He was on his way to Tlatelolco. He was on his way to Tlatelolco. He was walking. Of course he walked. He walked everywhere. He was walking there when he came past the hill of the nose, Tepeyac, and there he had a vision. He had a vision of a woman. And that woman spoke to him in his own language. In his own language. He was a new convert. He had converted to Christianity. Look at the name he took. Juan Diego. Why would he take a name like that? Teresa. Why would he take a name like that? Juan Diego. What's Diego? Santiago. Juan. Diego. Can you imagine that name more Spanish than Juan Diego? It's the name, of course, it's a Christian name. It's his new identity. It's his new identity. He's a new convert. He says, you know the story. Bring me. I want a church built here. Making the story. I'm probably making it too colloquial, too quotidian for you, but it's, I want you to build a church here. I want you to build something for here. And I want you to go tell this man, we're told now bishop, he wasn't a bishop yet. That's another story we hear. Well, Juan de Zumárraga he was a Franciscan, but he wasn't a bishop. Yeah, well, he was actually the leader of the Christian community, especially of the Franciscan community at that time. I want you to tell him that I want for you to build I want you to build a church for me here. Who knows which word for church was used? But what happened was Juan Diego did go. He went to the residence of Juan de Zumárraga and tried to talk to him. He waited for a long time. He was made to wait. And finally, when he got to speak with, after going through the assistants, he got to speak to Juan de Zumárraga. I said, yeah, okay. Bring me some kind of a sign. In the meantime, we know that Juan Diego heard that his uncle, who was very close to his uncle, who was also a convert, his uncle was also a convert, was very ill. So the next day, as he was walking back, why was he going to Tlatelolco? Does anyone know? For religious instruction and religious services. He was going there. There weren't very many places you could go. It was all new. This is new. The new religion, right, of this world he lives in. He was on his way, and then again, the Virgin appears to him and says, I want you to talk to this man, and I want you to tell him that I want a church. And he said, look, I need to take care of my uncle because he's ill. Who knows what happens with that part of the story? What happens? Don't worry about your uncle. He's well. It's been taken care of. As far as we know, that's the first miracle of the Virgen de Guadalupe. The first miracle. How many miracles are there? There's a saying in Spain by the famous medieval poet whose name was Gonzalo de Berceo. Gonzalo de Berceo said, los milagros de la Virgen son como las estrellas del cielo, innumerables. Did you catch that? Let's go back over that. Los milagros, the miracles, de la Virgen, of the Virgin, son como las estrellas, are like the stars in heaven. Son como las estrellas del cielo. Son innumerables. They're countless. You can't count them all. So Juan Diego discovers, he says, okay, I'm going to go back. He goes back. And the bishop, after it makes him wait a long time, says, no, he's not yet bishop. Juan de Zumárraga, not yet bishop. It's true. He says, I want you to bring me some evidence for this. I can't just believe what everyone tells me. So Juan Diego again has this dilemma. He says, well, what should I do? He goes back. The Virgin appears to him again and says, well, I want you to take him these flowers. So he found these very rare flowers that didn't grow in that area at all. And he took them. He decided he would take them. I'm shortening the story, but you know the story probably as well as I do. He takes the flowers in his cloak, which is called a tilma, right? He takes it, he takes the flowers, and the assistants keep grabbing at, what do you have in that cloak? What do you have? And he says, no. I have something here for I'm sure for him, Juan de Zumárraga was a man who was a very powerful man, a man who probably instilled fear in him. But why is Juan Diego not really afraid? Why does he dare go back? Why does he dare argue with the assistants who tried to hold him back, who tried to screen him? Why does he keep going back? He's always referred to as this humble little guy, this humble little guy. He may not have been so humble. He may have actually come from a family that actually had owned some property, probably so, and probably in that very small community. He wasn't from the poorest class. He was bold. But there's another reason, of course, and that is he understood that he was being commanded by a very, very powerful spiritual presence. He knew. So he goes and he opens the tilma, the flowers fall out, and there on that tilma is the image of La Virgen de Guadalupe, the Virgin of Guadalupe. Where is that tilma today? Megan. You can't remember? You're making me worry about my past talks. Where is that tilma today? That is actually at the Basilica de la Virgen de Guadalupe in Mexico. And if someone in this room says, raise your hand if you were going to say, which Basilica? Raise your hand. Because that's right. The one where we have the tilma today is the new Basilica. That wasn't the first Basilica. That's only from the 1970s, right? There actually are several churches there. The Basilica from before dates from 1709. Is it still standing? Yes, it's still standing. 1709, it's been restored several times. Why? Because it just so happens, here it is right here. It just so happens, all of us know Mexico City was built on a series of lakes. They were drained by the Spanish, filled over, fields were planted. Underneath this, the earth has so much water that over the years, right, the basilica went like this. It's actually better now. It still leans, but it's much better than it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Had much more of a tilt because water engineering underneath, they've been able to pump water, build and do as much as they can to get this as level as possible, and that means restructuring all of the joints inside where all of the cement had come loose and so on. They spent years and years and years getting it in the shape it's in now, and now it's absolutely beautiful inside. This is the new cathedral, which holds the new basilica, not cathedral. Why is it not a cathedral? There's no bishop there, right? Cathedrals have to have cathedra, ex cathedra, the seat of the bishop. So there's no bishop. This is a basilica. This is a basilica, which is a holy place where a holy relic is kept. That holy relic is actually the tilma. That is the holy relic. The holy relic, which you can see when you go to this place. Behind it, there's a hill. Behind this, there's on the side, there's a hill. And that hill is the famous hill of Tepeyac. That's where the first apparition took place. When Juan Diego was walking along Tepeyac, when he first saw the Virgin. That's why some people, one of the titles of the Virgin of Guadalupe is La Virgen del Tepeyac. Now I want you to tell me if there are any reproductions of Tepeyac that you can think of. Go ahead.
There's one in Oklahoma behind the Basilica for the Blessed Stanley.
Oh, you got it. That's so wonderful. I thought I was going to trick you. I feel like I've been humbled right here. Right here. There's actually, yes. For this. I don't care who told you. For you to see that. Now listen. I want to tell you something. Ignacio did not tell me. I was driving along one day, as usual, looking for old auto parts along Shields. And then, out of the clear blue, I look off to the side and I see, that looks exactly like Tepeyac. That hill, I'm having a vision. And suddenly I look over and, oh, of course, it's the shrine for Stanley Rother. There it is. Why would there be? I know my time is almost up, but I want to say something. Why would there be? There's Tepeyac in the back. Why would there be a reproduction of Tepeyac in Oklahoma City? It's the same answer. Why would there be in all the major cities in the United States a church called the Virgin of Guadalupe? The Church of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Why? She's the patroness of all of the Americas. Not only this, that's very important, right? That to be officially the patroness of all of the Americas. It's beyond that. It's this adoration, this devotion to the Virgin of Guadalupe in this country is not declining, it's growing. It's growing by leaps and bounds. It's all over the place. There's a book, I don't remember the name of it, but I've seen it, I've held it in my hand, and it's Images of La Virgen de Guadalupe in Los Angeles. The book is that big. I mean, it's just like everywhere. All kinds of things, bakeries, car washes, named after La Virgen de Guadalupe. Why? Because the Virgin of Guadalupe, to Mexicans, is their mother. I have a quote for you. See if you can tell me where this quote comes from. But let's translate it first. I'm going to read it, and I want you to write this down, and they can see where this quote appears. No estoy yo aquí, que soy tu madre. No, it's a question. No estoy yo aquí. Am I not here? Que soy when? Tu madre, your mother. Am I not here, your mother? Am I not here, your mother? No estoy yo aquí, tu madre. It's actually right in front of the new Basilica, La Virgen de Guadalupe, in Mexico City. So I would say put no estoy yo aquí, and then put Basilica and see if it appears. And they can see where it appears. It's right there in front of the Basilica. This is actually the whole secret to the Virgin of Guadalupe. This is a mother who is there to shield you, to comfort you, to protect you. This is why the Virgin de Guadalupe is not negotiable. Now, there it is, right in front of the cathedral. No estoy yo aquí, am I not here? Que soy, who am your mother? Que soy tu madre. When were those words uttered? It was when Juan Diego said, I'm not sure, I'm going to go back there. He said, no estoy yo aquí, que soy tu madre. Am I not telling you? Am I not your mother? Do you have to worry? Never. Never, never, never. One last story about the Virgin Guadalupe. There are a million stories. The first account of the Virgin de Guadalupe was not actually in Spanish. It's right here. The first account was called the Nicamopoa, which is in Nahuatl, which means aquí se cuenta. Here is told the story of the Virgin of Guadalupe. This is a paper copy. It's not worth anything.
It's a paper copy, but it's an exact replica of the Nikan Mopoa. I've shown it before. I think some of you have seen it. But afterwards, if you want to come up, I'll let you hold it. Just promise me you won't tear the pages, because it's actually an exact replica with all the defects of the. Who knows where the original manuscript is? It's in New York City, in New York Public Library. Being edited right now as we speak. A facsimile edition, which means an exact copy, is being prepared of the Nikan Mopoa, and it looks just like this. That tells the story of the Virgen de Guadalupe in Nahuatl, the language of the Mexica Empire. There it is. It was written by someone we don't know for sure, but we think his name was Juan de Valeriano. He was a student at Tlatelolco. This is where this all starts. Tlatelolco, the Franciscan community there. One last detail, if I can. I'm going over time, but I promise this is it. In the wars against the church in Mexico, 1926, 1929, called Los Tres Años de Silencio, 3 years of silence, because there were no church bells. Catholicism was banned. The Catholic religion was banned. Christianity was banned. All churches were closed except one. And I asked someone once, well, which one was not closed? I said, well, what do you mean, which one was not closed? The Basilica of the Virgen de Guadalupe. I said, well, why wasn't that one closed? And this Mexican said to me, because they knew that if they had closed that one, they would have had a real revolution. So it didn't happen. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for questions or not, but I can tell you this. You can come up and ask me anything, and I can also show you the copy of the Nikan Mopoa. Does anyone have a question?
When was the original one written?
When? If I knew that, I'd be the most. We don't know. There's a debate about it. The earliest date, we think, would have been maybe 1560. Maybe. We don't know for sure. Mid-16th century. Other question? Megan wants to know where the shrine is. It's in Mexico City, of course. La Ciudad de los Castillos, it's called. How could you? I'm sorry. I can't believe who was the one who said I knew that there was a Tepeyac in Oklahoma City, and it was because Ignacio told me. Oh, Ignacio, that is so important that you told someone that.
What happened was,
it's amazing.
Driving to school, I'm seeing the building, and then I see this huge hill, and I thought, oh, you know how they always break out dirt, and I thought,
and make a hill.
They should just leave that there. That looks pretty cool. And then I talk with my brother-in-law who works with the Archdiocese, and he goes, oh, Bob, oh no, that's going to be hill. That's going to be Tepeyac Hill. And I went, oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And when you look at it closely, and if you've seen Tepeyac,
it looks like it.
It looks just like Tepeyac in Mexico. It's got all the markers of the Tepeyac and so on. And you say to yourself, well, why would they do this? Well, Stanley, Rother, Hispanic world, Hispanic community, absolutely. Absolutely.
When is that going to be open? Do we know?
About another year?
There's a date, I'm sure but I don't know that date. That's a good question. Any other questions?
About another year.
Ignacio, I'm leaving it in your hands. If anyone wants to come up and look, here it is. If not, I think
the only thing I have is, hey folks, get some more food. There's plenty of good food back there. And then off you go to your classes. And we want to thank you so much.
it was an honor to meet you. It was an honor to meet you.
We're honored to have you.
We are honored to have you.